one of the key elements of storytelling is the moment when the story pivots, when we're no longer describing the past, but there's a turn in the story. And that's what attracts us very often to stories, because we didn't anticipate that. There's something new here. Our minds start to race forward and see, where will the story lead us to? What will happen to the hero or the heroine of the story? How will it all end up? As human beings, we very often connect to that. And with that in mind, one of the words that I just want to introduce to the discussion, if we spoke about creativity first, I want to talk about a related word, the word that I would call crazy. So one of the most enjoyable books I've enjoyed reading in as the pandemic has hit is Crazy is a Compliment. And in that book, it talks about the story of entrepreneurial businesses as they've discovered themselves, as the rest of the world says, this idea is crazy, this will never work, this couldn't be. And it struck me that in this unfolding crisis, a lot of new ideas may seem for us to be at first crazy. Perhaps to reward and recognize people who come up with very different creative ideas. In many respects, that is crazy, that is not normal. In many ways, not sticking to a budget that looked for us to be a good guidance in how we would perform and operate over the next year, suddenly that's out the window. That's no longer a crazy idea anymore. Not having offices, for example, for even large, significant organization. Hey, that was crazy a year ago. So if I had to kind of use that word for a moment, what are some of the crazy ideas that you've seen as you worked with these tools, as you worked within the thinking of Work Forward, that give you a sense that this is a permission for people to participate, to create something new, and not simply to synthesize all established ideas into a slightly tweaked version of those?
Sar, while they're thinking about that, I just wanted to pivot this, because you gave us a nice opportunity to do that, right back to the beginning of this conversation, which is that crazy looks like intuition, but it is actually often anticipation. It is precisely somebody who's been looking deeply in those three ways that we talked about. What are the patterns of change? What are the sort of things that I see bubbling up that for which we don't have data? And how can I use imagination to sort of impress myself on the situation? I think that's the crazy you're talking about, and it makes a nice circle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit like the data and the imagination, right? You need both. And as you said, it's not complete magic. There's a real synthesis behind this that allows people to, in a sense, come up with what is crazy ideas, or what used to be considered crazy. But let me open it up.
I think crazy from a leadership perspective is often just the courage to get it wrong. Right? If we think about our professional business environments, our leaders are supposed to be these flawless, well, I know what we're doing and I'll just take everybody there, that kind of attitude. And I think the crazy is to say, I don't know exactly, but we should be trying this. And then to listen to your people, to reach out, to get that data, to say, I'm willing to put our flag out here. Can we go make that happen? And listen and hear it, build and move to the next thing. And that's, I think it's terrifying, because many leaders feel their position and their success is built on just that word, success, not failure. And moving into ambiguity requires that you say, I don't know, or that you're willing to accept a greater amount of risk and not see it as a detrimental thing.
And I'll add yes and to that. The other complexion on that is, I use the word diversity, and I don't mean race. I mean diversity of thought, which means empowering people on your team of, well, we don't do it like that, or we've only done it this way. And if you don't have diversity of thought, you don't have people that are, like Amy said, we're pushing and they might see a pattern a different way. And if you don't empower them, give them authority to push, try, fail, evolve, then you will not succeed in a crisis, because the crisis is a battlefield that's constantly going off. You have to let the person find the idea, see their pattern, and somebody might see it differently, and most people do. But if it's a homogenous organization, and this is how we've always done it, they will not survive a crisis. They can't, because they only have one perspective, and their story is the same story all the time. So I think diversity is another huge topic for me that really matters. Diversity of thought. It's why we, in a lot of our engagements, we use the left brain, right brain idea, so kind of like what you were referencing, but the imagination part with the people that see things and keep them going. And the answer is you need both to succeed, but at different elements and different amounts for different situations. So creativity, diversity, evolving, those are the things that will get us around the corner. And Amy, I love pattern recognition. That is prescient, where you actually can see it.
Well, I see something in the middle of everything here that I really appreciate, because in the moment, this is kind of how things work, and why this new style of working works is because through the sharing and the collaboration, and we're not in the same room, but we can come together in this space. There's a tension between an acceleration of time and imagination, and I think all of us have been in a career long enough to know that we had a great idea, it was just ahead of the market, right? How many times did Magic, was it General Magic, invented the smartphone years before anyone was ready, before the internet existed, right? So we've been in an industrialized society for so long that the numbers tell us to take the safe route, right? We've seen the glorious failures and said, "Woof, glad I wasn't part of that." And what that has led to is basically an attenuation of our imagination and playing it safe. And now we're living the future in real time. Like every time you read the news, there's something that was science fiction is now just someone's day job. And there's a moment here where we actually need to avoid a failure of imagination, a failure of our ability to actually seize the moment where we can have these crazy ideas. And there is more possibility now for those crazy ideas to actually land at a time when the market is ready to adopt them and support them, that probably has never existed before in the last 300 years.